driving and driving across the country. Little stuff like that, so well done. It's understated for it that works so well. But yeah, I can't recommend it enough.
My favorite episode was always It's a Good Life. It's an episode about a child who has godlike powers, basically. And the whole thing is, people are like, hello, Billy, how you doing? He's like, why'd you say it like that? Why are you being so weird? He's like, I'm not being weird, Billy. It's a beautiful coloring book. It's like a coloring of like a pig getting disemboweled. He's like, beautiful shading. Because if you upset the kid, he'll just make you fucking disappear. He'll have you meld with animals, or like all the kids in the town are gone because they're all afraid of him, and they're like, oh, he doesn't want to play with me, so he's killed every kid in town. Basically, they're just gone. There's no people.
It's like a malevolent god.
Oh my god, yeah, but it's a 6-year-old kid, or like an 8-year-old kid. It's fucking unbelievable. I like on these days too, in October, to just watch like 3 episodes of a series. And mine, I always like, and I do this a lot anyways, but Tales from the Crypt, I think, is probably my favorite horror series of all time. The amount of money they must have put into like making sets and like making these episodes unreal. It feels like a beautiful evolution of Twilight Zone. Twilight Zone was very stark, very like kind of serious. I mean, like all the time. Like Twilight Zone is it's like a very dark show. Yeah. And it looks a little more comical now just because, I mean, the show was made like in the 50s or 60s.
There was an episode where William Shatner was on a plane and was convinced that there was Bigfoot hanging on the wing of a plane. So not all of
it's fucking horrifying. Yeah. It's horrifying though. He like looks out, he's like all sweaty and shit, and he like look outside the plane, you're like, oh my god! It's like a full-on thunderstorm, and this thing is just on the wing of the plane. It's fucking unbelievable. The guy's freaking out. Since the show is in black and white, it's so cold. Like the show is just so cold and evil and dark, and I think it still holds up today, and the acting is so good. I love watching Twilight Zone episodes because every performance is just like so fun. I love it. And Tales from the Crypt is the complete opposite. It's like cheesy. There's a lot of bad actors on it. There's a lot of people who got their start, like Brad Pitt. I think that was his first acting role. But because it's so much more loose and like kind of comical, it goes over the top in so many great ways. Whether it be a lumberjack episode about like a guy who owns a lumberjack company, gets a new wife, and she's trying to suck everybody's dick. He's just like, stop looking at my wife! And he like beats the guy to death. My favorite episode is about 2 guys who are gambling against each other, and they keep raising the stakes. They play poker, but every time you lose a hand, you have to cut off one of your fingers. It's so brutal, but there's so many episodes that are so well done, and even the ones that are like really bad and kind of cartoonish, it's just fun. Like it's just a great, really fun show. It's such a beautiful polar opposite of even your Crypt Keeper host is so over the top and cartoony versus like Rod Sterling, who's just like, how'd you picture it? Well, babies need each other, and you have to put them in an icebox. You're like, what the are you talking about, dude?
Yeah, it's a classic horror moment.
It's a classic.
Something we've all feared.
Yeah, but it's great. I love it. On day 21 of October, I want to finish out this will be the last of the found footage, I believe, and I want to recommend The Bay, which I also think no matter what, in October you gotta watch the Blair Witch Project. I don't care if people say that it's overhyped or anything. It's the OG, dude. And I know that there was some before, but nothing did it like Blair Witch. The only reason that found footage is even a thing now is because of Blair Witch. Pay respect to the elders, bitches. The Blair Witch, I think, in my opinion, is still the GOAT. But The Bay is an amazing found footage film. Once again, it kind of flips the trope. And also it's like weird about like a biochemical kind of an outbreak, but it's all from like, what is it, isopods?
I think
the little bugs.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
It's the little bugs that eat fish's tongues.
Yeah.
But it's like, imagine those, but they're huge, and they contaminate the water of this town, and they start eating the residents from the inside out. And it's all these vignettes of like cop footage, news anchors, security cam footage of people surviving the day. And the whole movie is basically like people kind of talking about recounting that day. It's like Rhode Island or Maine, East Coast town of this like port. And it's just really well done. It's very effective, and it's something so different than other found footage movies that it does feel like a fun palate cleanser. It isn't like paranormal. It is body horror in a way. It dips into that realm of like, oh fuck, this feels like it happened, and it's a lot of fun. All right, we are into basically our last week of movies here, starting on day 22. What do you got?
For day 22, we are going to go with a classic, The Shining. The Shining, in my opinion, is the best Stephen King work, or I should say best Stephen King adaptation, which is funny considering he's hated the adaptation for years because it does stray very far from the book. But Stanley Kubrick is a master of his craft, and there is a reason as to why. Regardless of the ethics of his filming behaviors, it does create some incredible films. I will not say it's because of what he does, but regardless, good films come out of the guy. And The Shining is one. The Shining is one of the most effective creations of tension I've ever seen. From the way the movie starts, to seeing the slow degradation of Jack throughout the film, to where it ends up at the ending, to the entire last 30 minutes of the movie that become a chase effectively. It's just so well done. I love the mystique of The Shining. I know Stephen King wants everything to be explained for 20 pages, but it just works so much better in my opinion when she's just running up the stairs and sees a dog man laid down across a guy in a suit. Or the ending where you see Jack's picture on the picture that was taken back in the 20s. The Overlook Hotel is some ancient old being that has existed there for years incalculable. And we just see a short vignette of a couple of people who happen to come across it. It's so good. So good all around.
The use too of The Shining as a power.
Yeah.
Of Jack Nicholson's son Danny having this power of The Shining, along with the man who also works at the Overlook Hotel, and they're kind of talking to each other. And there's just these weird elements of telepathic powers, or being able to speak with the dead, basically, which makes his ties with his dad kind of fun. Maybe it's a ghost movie, and I don't think anyone is ever oh yeah, it's my favorite ghost movie. This is easily the best ghost movie of all time. It's so crazy. Jack Nicholson's performance is fucking amazing. But once again, this is one of those movies where it's it's just an excuse to watch it. Man, it's I've seen it a billion times. Watch it a billion one. It's so good.
Yeah.
I wanted to shout out this movie called Eyes of My Mother. It's an American movie. This movie is so good. It's a girl who lives out in this farmland, and one day a man shows up to her house, kills her mom, kills her family, and she's left there alone with him. She knocks him out, and then she just keeps him in her barn for the next 20 years, and cuts out his tongue, does all this crazy stuff. I don't want to dive too much into it, but the movie is unreal, dude. And I was this is a fucking classic in the making for me. Such a beautifully shot movie, so elegant and soft spoken. There's not a lot of dialogue, hauntingly silent. I love it. So Eyes of My Mother, if you haven't seen it, check it out. On day 23, it is my crime day. It's a double mashup of Silence of the Lambs and Zodiac, which in my opinion are the best crime horror films ever made. I don't even know if you can count Zodiac as a horror film, but I just like watching it in October.
It feels the vibe. It's
it has that kind of deal. I get almost more horror out of Jake Gyllenhaal's obsession. This dark obsession with finding out who this guy is. It's a deep dive into madness. I love that about Zodiac. It's easily my favorite David Fincher movie. But Silence of the Lambs it's one of the movies where so many people have taken from that movie, whether it be Seven or whether it be even the Saw movies or this kind of mystery thriller. I think that Silence of the Lambs is such a masterpiece of a movie, especially Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster do great, but then it's just such an interesting concept of Jodie Foster going to Hannibal Lecter, not because he's even the main guy, he's just helping out with the case, to this other guy named Buffalo Bill, who's kidnapped a woman and wants to wear her skin. It's a crazy movie, and it's once again, it's one of those movies everybody's seen it, but it's the excuse to watch it again, because I tend to find that with these classics, you remember the general idea of it, but then when you sit down to watch it again, you're holy I forgot about all the awesome stuff in this movie. You forget about the setup and really how it plays out. I love it.
Yep. Hard to go wrong with it for sure. So for October the 24th, I want to recommend a movie that is a personal favorite of mine, and that is The Ritual. The Ritual to me is so inspiring. There's actually a horror project I'm writing right now that The Ritual is my primary influence for. There's so much stuff that plays with the idea of, we have this The Woods, or we have a cult or something like that, and we have someone just kind of dip their toe into it. But there's few things that so well represent that carried out to its fullest than The Ritual. From the monster to the characters we have, all the characters are enjoyable, and watching them get picked off one by one. It hurts the setup of the cult, and they come across the initial church and the statues. It unravels the mystery so well. I remember that one shot where they're in skinny trees and they think they see something moving, but they think they could be just, it's in their heads. It's so well done. The Ritual's a classic. I love it both as a character piece and as a horror movie. And also, if you're in the mood for another kind of pagan horror flick, we've got The Wicker Man, the 1973 version. The 1973 one's a great mystery. This guy goes to an island in search of missing young girls, if I believe right. They may be held locally on the island, and then it quickly turns into a folklore cult film. It's fantastic. Now, the remake with Nicolas Cage, you should also watch for entirely different reasons.
Yeah, you watch that one in the summertime.
Exactly.
Not anywhere near the spooky time because it's that bad.
Exactly, but you still watch it because Not the Bees is funny. But the 1973 Wicker Man is a great horror film. To me, I personally like The Ritual a bit more, but either is a very worthy pagan horror choice for your Halloween season.
I feel like I have such a love for this 1973 Wicker Man. The Ritual is, I mean, bar none within the last, I don't know. I mean, it's one of the best monster designs ever. But even like you were saying, like some of the props, like the statue, it's like this descent into kind of madness that these people go through. They kind of like these lapse of time they don't remember. They're kind of going insane.
Yeah.
Is amazing. But then like the monster is that. But I think that the best thing it did was I love the way that it visualizes nightmares. Like some of the parts in this movie, they're all kind of plagued by their friend who had been murdered, and they are in the woods. But then they keep like replaying this in his head of this like quick mark that he got shot in, and it's like the way that they set up the quick mark in the forest is just so, I love it. It's so creepy. It's such a great representation of like slipping into complete and total chaos in your mind, and like a nightmare come to life in your actual physical setting, and how this monster is kind of like plaguing your thoughts. I love the visuals of it. It's amazing. But 1973 Wicker Man, Christopher Lee, and just like God, the film, like the film grain look, it's just one of those, like, you get so bought in with the investigator who's also just getting so pissed because everyone is so fucking kooky. They're all just like, I don't know, you crazy son of a bitch. And he's like, what? He's like, I am a man of the law. Like, you have to respect me. And then for it to it has like just such a haunting ending of just so good. I mean, everyone knows the ending of him getting burned or whatever in the statue, but if you've never seen the 1973 version, because I know a lot of people too were like icked out by like it's so old. Like,
Grow up.
Yeah,
grow up. Shut up, I don't care. You're weak. Your lineage will be lost. The worms will forget about you.
Yeah, what he said. Moving on to day 25, because I like to watch Nightmare on Elm Street 2, which is, in my opinion, the best Nightmare on Elm Street. I love it. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, I like it more than Dream Warrior and all that bullshit.
Whoa.
Give me Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. It's Freddy. He's dipping into a little bit more comical. I mean, like, by the third
You like
one,
it more than the first one?
Cowabunga, bitch. Yeah, I like it more than the first one. He's more realized in the second one. Also, I like the characters more, like the interesting dynamic of the guy, and like, I don't know. I know that Red Letter Media had this great video talking about it and how it feels like it's also it's a movie about like gay identity. It's like a queer movie, and it's funny to hear the writer talk about it because he's like, oh, I had no idea I was just writing. And the
wow,
translated
interesting,
Freddy is, he gets more comical. They give him more of that screen time, but he's still nefarious. He hasn't gone totally schlock. Which, don't get me wrong, I love schlocky, like, you know, whatever kind of the kind of comical version we get of him. But it's just, I love Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, and I also like Friday the 13th Part 2. That's my favorite one. For some reason, the Part 2s are my favorite, because also Jason without the hockey mask, and it's just a fucking potato sack with one eye hole. So
yeah, I do agree that he looks terrifying in the second one, much more so than like later.
It's fucking.
The mask is the potato sack is far scarier to me than the hockey mask. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, don't be wrong, the hockey mask is iconic.
Sure,
I love it. But like crazy redneck in the woods, you're just like, oh yeah, you remember how it was his mom? Yeah, no, that's actually him now, and he's actually just been like hiding in the mountains, and he's here to kill you.
Yeah, and it also sets up every Friday the 13th film that comes afterwards. Like,
they're all the same movies, you know, but this one is definitely like just a rehash of the first movie. You kind of have a similar ending. You know, we're not rewriting the wheel or anything here. I think it's just a fun. I love Friday the 13th Part 2.
Yeah. Next, for October the 26th, we're closing in on the date itself now. We have another classic, Hellraiser. So, like, there's all these horror movies that, as I was a kid, I remember being told, it's like, oh, it's the scariest movie ever. Things like The Exorcist, right? Or I remember a bunch of people told me The Poltergeist was one of the scariest movies ever. But Hellraiser was just kind of thrown in the mix with those. And then most of them didn't really live up to the hype. Like, don't get me wrong, I love The Exorcist, I love Poltergeist, but they're not that scary. Hellraiser was that scary thing. It is something about people being so obsessed with like physical pleasure, they're willing to like sell their souls in a sense to obtain it. And then you have the Cenobites, which are these horrific amalgamations of things that used to be people, but now we're so far removed from it. Hellraiser doesn't get called body horror enough, in my opinion. Most people kind of chalk it up as a supernatural horror more than anything else. But to me, the scariest part of the story is imagining the nightmare that had to happen for people to become these things. Our main character who becomes the antagonist of the flick, he's like pieces of meat and flesh across stone. He has been completely eviscerated. And the idea of him still being alive through that is terrifying. And also there's that line near the end, the Jesus wept line, which still kind of creeps me out to this day. Like,
That's an improvised line, too.
I did not know that. Really? That's the
Greatest improvised line of all time.
I mean, it's so freaky because it's like Inoki has seconds less life to serve, and there's no remorse, there's no sadness. He just wants to be vile for one time he can. While the word vile still means something,
The Hellraiser movie too is kind of interesting because it gets such infamy with the chains, the people being ripped apart,
Yeah.
Pinhead and the Xenobites. They're barely in the film.
Pinhead can be a little bit more, but I think the others would have exceeded like 3 minutes of screen time.
Whenever heartburn strikes, get fast relief with Tums. It's time to love food back. Also try new Tums Gummy Bites.
Oh god, I mean like if that, but
Yeah.
it's so effective, and this whole movie is deception.
Yeah.
They make it seem like the main character is the daughter, but really to me the stepmom is the main character. She's being torn by her love of this brother, and she's had to settle down with the kind of plain Jane that she married, this
Yeah.
guy, kind of family guy. Now he's like, by the way, I'm fucking back, and I need you to bring me people.
Yeah.
And he's just been like killing people and like sucking up their blood so his body can reform. And it's just this like insane deception and like this give and take of this like weird family drama. It's like this odd family drama of like a girl being like, I don't know which brother I want to speak with. And it's just totally fucked up. One of the best horror movies, if not one of the most iconic horror movies of the 80s, Hellraiser. So good. To caveat that too, Dead Alive, Peter Jackson's cartoonish masterpiece. I'd like to include on this day because Hellraiser, the whole movie is very slow. You have like a bloody guy. Oh, you can feed me, whatever. And then it gets into, it's crazy, gory, nightmare realm. Dead Alive is just, from beginning to end, just so cartoonish and over the top. One of the goriest, funnest practical effects movies. And it's so funny to be like, this guy also went on to make more 3.
Yeah, if I recall, Dead Alive for a while was the world record for most practical blood used in a film.
The parts of like this guy, this kind of sheepish guy, being able to kill all of these like dickhead zombies that have been, or like people that have turned into zombies, the kind of creature his mom becomes. It's very, very cheesy. It's very like, at times in my opinion, borderline, almost hard to watch with how cringe like the character is, and some of the dialogue is very comical. It's such a fun movie. Like it's so fun building this character to the point where when it does get to the part where he kind of like he takes care of himself, it feels so earned. It's a lot of fun. And also too, it's just Peter Jackson, just such young ambition, just such a young director that just like explodes with creativity on the screen. On the 27th of October, we move back to anthology. I want to talk about my favorite anthology movie of all time, which is Creepshow. I love Creepshow. The brainchild of George Romero and Stephen King come together to make a bunch of fun horror shorts. George Romero does a nice little zombie film about a dad coming back to a life for his birthday cake, even though his family hates him. Comes back there. Stephen King plays himself as like a redneck dude who wants to sell an asteroid, but gets turned into a veggie man. But The Thing Under the Stairs is probably my favorite short of any anthology series of all time, of like a weird crate found under the stairs of the university. The monster is so scary. The acting is so good. The guy is just beaten down by his wife this whole time, and he devises a plan to feed her to the monster. It's so good. And then you have the crazy guy who's like a sanitary nut who has cockroaches come over and it's just gross insect. Man, it's just so effective. And it's also really leaning into these like freeze-frame comic book moments that are blasted with saturated color. It's just, I mean, you just can't go wrong watching Creepshow. It's a classic for a reason. It's on the little tippity end of the list here.
So I will also mention when we're talking about our final anthologies, I have to mention VHS 2. I talked about it before. For me, that's what makes VHS one of my favorite modern horror series. I always go up to people, I'm like, oh, what's your second favorite VHS short? Because I already know what the first one is. It's always Safe Haven. It just does its concept so well, executes so well, the effects are so great. And it's here in VHS 2, but I like the other shorts in VHS 2 as well, like the one about the dog.
That's a fun one. That's a fun use of the found footage format. I really like when people find justify the found footage. Like I know I said, like, why are you recording? But to make it something where it's like, oh, we're playing with our dog, and you put a camera on him, because, I mean, people do that. You want to have, like, funny footage of your dog running around, so it's just from the perspective of the dog the whole time. It's pretty funny.
I also like the other one, Ride at the Park, the zombie that has a GoPro strapped to his head, so it like attacks a little kid's birthday party. Like, it's just fun. And like I said, Safe Haven is probably the best. It is the best in the series, in my opinion. So yeah, but like, if you're looking for anthologies and stuff out somewhere, just put on VHS. And the nicest part about VHS films is their anthology horror. You can start anywhere. It's just Zone Vendetta 4. So start with 2, start with 94, start with wherever you find it. So for October the 28th, we are moving very close to the date itself. So we have a very big classic, and that is The Exorcist 3. If you've seen the original Exorcist, which I imagine most of you haven't, you're really familiar with it, you know it is a staple of horror, blah, 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 one of the classics of the genre. What you may not know is that the third one is, as some may say, equally as good, or at least equally as scary. The Exorcist 3 follows the investigator, one of the priests from the original film. Obviously not the one who threw himself out of the window, but that goes without saying. It's more of a mystery, really, than a lot of other, like, possession horror flicks. It's kind of about this investigator trying to put together this crime, and then deciding if, if the devil has something to do with it, or if it's just a killer at large. But some of the scares in it work so well. It has this one very iconic moment of a nun walking across the hallway with a syringe, I believe.
The scissors, the giant
scissors, that's right, the giant scissors, yeah, across the hallway.
Arguably the best jump scare of all time.
Several point the best jump scare of all time. And it works well too, because the scare of that moment is the jump is in the camera rather than the scene. The scene's able to, breathe to its own thing, but you still get that jump scare effect. Yeah, The Exorcist 3 is a classic. If you haven't checked out or have only seen The Exorcist, recommend it. You can skip 2, don't worry about 2. You can just go to the third one.
The first movie was directed by William Friedkin, who is like an amazing director, one of the best of all time. He just died recently, very sad. The interesting thing about Exorcist 3, though, was it was written as a book called Legion, a book by William Peter Blatty, but he also directed it, and it wasn't even supposed to be an Exorcist film. They were just like, yeah, we have to sell this thing as the third one, which is weird after the second one flopped so hard. The first movie is so good about the desperation of mom trying to take care of her kid, and it's something too where it's like the religion aspect is the absolute last resort. She does all these things of like going to scientists, does these tests, all these crazy things, and finally she's just like, I have no other options, I'm going to call in the priesthood. And what's crazy about that movie is like that's like the very close to the end of the film. It's like just a haunting movie of a woman who's just like, I don't know what the fuck to do.
Yeah.
Like I'm so lost. And I think I like it so much just because it's another movie about faith. George C. Scott, who gives like such a great performance, just screaming the whole movie, angry as shit. And then he is met with his friend who desperately, like, you're just like has deep respect for, who is of faith and stuff. And the weird thing is it's like a weird murder mystery. Like some of the events that are happening remind the investigator of a killer called the Gemini Killer, who is played by Brad Dourif.
Yep.
God, I like Brad Dourif.
Teen sensitivity is so common. It immediately feels like somebody's poking directly on their nerves. I recommend Sensodyne.
Planet Fitness. We're all strong on this planet.
One more, everybody.
God, if you're not a horror fan, he's Wormtongue in Lord of the Rings as well, but he's also the voice of Chucky. Brad Dourif in this movie is so fucking evil. It's unbelievable. The way that he just like takes so long to say anything, like the way he just screeches out these words. Anyways, I'm harping on it too much, but it's an amazing movie about faith and the dichotomy between the priesthood, Gemini Killer, and the investigator. Like George C. Scott just goes to the fucking ringer in this movie, and it's awesome. If you've never seen this film, you gotta do it. It's
Especially if you hate George C. Scott. You want to see him suffer.
yeah, I was gonna say you will see George C. Scott definitely suffer in this film. It's there you go.
So that's what you're into.
The last 3 days, these are the ones where I'm like, I'm knee deep in, I'm neck deep in, and this day is It from the 90s, the TV movie, and Fright Night. I wasn't a big fan of the new It movies. say it. I think it's just because I have such a love for the old ones where I was just like, why the fuck do I need a new one? Tim Curry, you can't beat Tim Curry. The old TV special too, horrible. Like it's like really poorly acted, but it's so fun. I love it. The kid version, once again, way better than the adult version. But even still, the adult version still has this level of cheese and grit to it that's so fun. And also, I mean, dude, when I watched that when I was younger, I could barely take a bath. I was so afraid of the drain in my bathroom that it freaked me out. I had horrible nightmares about it. Tim Curry is just so good, man. Such an iconic performance, and I feel creeped up by him and some of the scenes in this. It's just such an effective and also simple, such a simple outfit.
Yeah. It's like, also, the original It, to me, the concept is never that scary. I understand how if you're a kid, like Stranger Danger stuff is scary, and I think it is creepy for sure, but to me, it's never been that terrifying, the idea of like the It clown stuff. To me, the film works better as almost like a Sandlot-esque horror movie, right? About like kids experiencing stuff at the time of their life, which for me is why I like the 90s better than the new one. I understand that the new one is objectively scarier, but to me the scares were never the things that was attractive about it. It still has that special tone.
Especially as a kid watching it, it's so creepy. And also too, the whole thing of it becomes like a weird alien, or like a bug alien or something.
Yeah, that kind of kills me.
But it's just so much fun. And also to keep the momentum up on that, I think it should be required by law in October. You have to watch Fright Night. I like Fright Night more than I like The Lost Boys. I think Fright Night is the most 80s aesthetic, especially like that time frame of teenage kid. No one listens to him. There's a weird guy across the street. It's so good. Fright Night, I think by law should be required to watch.
Taking your high school girlfriend to the theater back in like the 80s to see Fright Night had to be like a soulful experience. Can you imagine?
Oh my god. I can't. It must have been amazing. It was good eating in the 80s, dude. Taken for date nights at theaters, that was good eating.
For October the 30th, one day, this is All Hallows Eve, the day before Christmas, right? We have a couple classics that are kind of in their self parody, or at least respective of the entire genre. We've got Scream and Cabin in the Woods. So Scream, I mean, we all know it's classic. There's two killers. The movie about that there's a serial killer and they go through all the rules of horror movies, you know, never be alone, never hook up, stuff like that. And then the twist that there's two killers. And it's classic performances from all around. I think this is the first thing I ever saw Drew Barrymore in, and she's like, you know, a classic staple of 90s films and stuff like that. Scream is like the final boss, especially if you're doing this list and you watch all the horror movies. Scream is the final boss of like, oh yes, a horror movie that understands it's a horror movie, exactly what that implies. And it has such a fun job at it. So can't recommend Scream enough. And also Cabin in the Woods. Cabin in the Woods is to what Scream is about like slasher films. Cabin in the Woods is for like monster movies. So it's about a group of teens who are stuck in what initially appears to be a cabin in the woods. It just has creepy stuff happening around it. Also to find out it is effectively like the SCP organization that contains all of these supernatural threats and is performing these sacrifices to an old occult god. And the scene where all the monsters get out and start killing everyone, oh, it's so good. It's such a great scene. Cabin in the Woods is great, Scream's great. Highly recommend both if you love the horror genre, or even if you hate the horror genre. It's super fun at it. Which if you do, I don't know why you're this far into the video, but still.
The idea of Scream is so fun too because it's Wes Craven who made Nightmare on Elm Street. He was like a huge benefactor, but kind of was him critiquing the kind of genre that he helped create. Just a fun thing of it's so oversaturated, but to have it reinvented in that fun way, is just awesome. And then Cabin in the Woods is, I think, it's such a love letter to horror films and to see Chris Hemsworth die in a really funny way. It's just a great treat right before he becomes like the biggest actor. And then lastly, on Halloween Day, I always watch my two movies I always watch on Halloween Day is Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, and The Thing. I'm not going to talk about The Thing. I've talked about The Thing a million fucking times. Yes, it's my favorite movie of all time. There it is. I think Halloween 3, Season of the Witch is the epitome of Halloween movies. I think aesthetically it is perfect. It's like what Halloween should have been, which is just like an anthology film each time. John Carpenter came out with Halloween. They're like, that's awesome. And he's like, this would be an awesome trilogy, or like it'd be an awesome anthology of like every year we do a new Halloween thing. And then Michael Myers blew up, and they're like, that bring back the pale-faced bastard. Yeah. So Halloween 3, Season of the Witch was like just this continuation of this idea of kind of like new story every year or every couple of years. And it's just, I love it. The first time I saw it, I was disappointed because there was no Michael Myers. And then I kept watching it because it just fits that great, like, vintage mask vibe. The whole idea of, like, kids buying these masks and the kind of, like, commercialization of trick-or-treating.
Plus, I mean, it's such an interesting historic point, you know, because it's like, oh, well, Halloween was going to be like a once per year, almost anthology type, different spooky Halloween story every year. And then Michael Myers was in the first one, and that's not what the series became. Because in the second one, they're like, okay, well, we'll finish up Michael Myers' story. And then they tried for one movie to make it its own thing, the Season of the Witch, and they said, absolutely not, and jumped back to Michael Myers. Which it's funny, it's a weird historic point in filmmaking, but also just the fact that it is so Halloween. It's about jack-o'-lanterns around town, like killing people. Like you can't. It's up there with Trick or Treat for me for being like the quintessential Halloween. So if you're gonna watch a movie, if you're gonna have a party, you're gonna have friends over, you're gonna watch something fun together, Season of the Witch is a great option. I'll also say the song that was made for the movie by Donovan is on my regular playlist I listen to every day.
It's amazing. Holy shit, that's 31 films. So now you can't complain. You can't complain.
Now you have to shut up.
Now you have to shut up and watch a movie. We even gave you the exact date. So today, start off the list with Willard, dude. Sit down tonight, watch Willard, and just let the things go. I'd love to hear you guys, rejoice about the movies or even talk shit on them. Maybe you can hate them. I don't know. These are just recommendations. And Isaiah, or Wendy, thank you so much for coming and recommending some movies with me, my love.
Well, I had no other option.
That is true. He was forced at gunpoint.
If I wanted to get paid, I had to be here. But no, ironically, Hunter's a great friend. Always happy to be on the channel. Appreciate it, my guy. And thank you all so much for watching. And let us know what you think about these scary films, because they certainly mean a lot to us. So either, agree with us in the comments or be mean and make Hunter cry. That's fine too.
Please be me and make me cry. I love that. Enjoy your October, everyone. This is the best month of the year. Let's stay scared. And also check out Creepcast. It's a great show, I swear.
It's okay, I guess. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye-bye.